When you're younger, it's just a game. Something you do with your friends to pass the time. You hack fools for the same reason most do, the fun of it. But when you reach the next level of competition, you begin to thirst for victory and glory. But this will not come with ease. The competition is more intense. Social engineering is more difficult. Employees don't hit your best fishing lures. People have pretty much stopped believing in that African prince, dude. That's a bummer. You will need to polish your skills. All of this training requires conditioning to keep your body in top physical shape. Meaning, you will need something that is proven to rehydrate, replenish, and refuel your body. Dumpster diving is hard. Have you ever tried to climb up into a dumpster? Those freaking things are tall. When you hit the bigs, it gets more intense. Hackers are upping their game. They're leveraging AI. Heck, most of them don't even write their own code anymore. Speaking of the bigs, our next guest is schooling fools on the art of deception. Her name is Alethe Denis. She's mad skilled at hacking. For real. If you're gonna play in her world, you'd better fuel up. So if it's glory and victory you're after, you'll need a powerful drink to get you there. It also helps if you have rich parents to bail you out of jail, awesome genetics, and a brain like Napoleon. HackerAid. The extra juice, the extra step, and the extra kick.
Available where you shop locally or online at hackeraid.com. For a limited time, use offer code AskYourMama to get 20% off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Disclaimer: may cause hives, blisters, dry mouth, polyps, lice, rickets, scurvy, erectile dysfunction, and the loss of some limbs. Don't worry, you don't really need those limbs anyway. This product is not approved by the FDA and will not cure diseases.
Episode 3, Alethe-Al Weapon with Alethe Denis. Cyber Distortion Podcast. This is episode 3 of season 3, and this is going to be an awesome episode. We've got a very special guest here tonight with us that lives in the world of social engineering. Social engineering, what is that? Well, it's taking advantage of natural human tendency to trust. That's what we all do, right? And its success relies on the perpetrator's ability to manipulate victims into divulging information they shouldn't be divulging. Usually that's in the form of data or system information or passwords. This is also known as human hacking. And tonight's special guest, Alethe Denis, is a master at social engineering. She's a master manipulator, you could say. And she's got legit skins on the wall to prove it. We're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to get into a lot of that. In fact, if I were to say, what Alethe does as a typical day-to-day, if I just started talking about it out of context, you might think, oh, this is a bad person. But no, actually, she's a very good person. And she helps companies and people understand how to get better at recognizing these types of threats, recognizing social engineering attacks, and how to avoid those bad actors that are trying to apply those types of tactics to you. So before we get started, I got a confession. I just want to jump into this real quick. Jason, I think I talked to you about this at one point, but I kind of put together a little podcast bucket list of guests a while back. You remember this, my top 10 list, right?
Yeah.
Today, we check one of those off the box because Alethe was on that list. I've kind of monitored what she's done the last several years, and I actually met her before at my very first DEF CON 24. I met Alethe, and I can't even remember why we were communicating, something about a sticker swap or something silly. But anyway, we met way back then. And it was just, it's ever since then, I've just kind of been following you and tracking how your social engineering background has evolved and everything that's happened from there. So, Jason, I'm going to hand it off to you. I'm super stoked about this episode. What are your thoughts?
Hey, dude, look, straight up, we're talking about skins on the wall. Alethe has some skins.
Oh,
dude.
no doubt.
Straight up. I mean, if you're talking about black badge winner, come on, man. You got to have some skins to pull one of those things off, right? I mean, I'm super impressed, Alethe, with what you've done. And, you know, like, one of the key things with these conversations that we have with experts like yourself is listening to their story and what makes them tick. And there's a lot to their backstory, but there's a lot to just how they operate day to day and what makes them successful at what they do. And so I'm so excited to get behind the scenes and have you share some of that gold rich, you know, story nugget, you know, of what makes you tick and how do you succeed at it. And hopefully, you know, our audience will walk away thinking that, you know, feeling empowered and thinking that there's aspects about how you do a job or how you approach a job or just what makes you tick in succeeding at what you do, that they'll decide that they want to do something similar or have a career in cybersecurity. So I'm really excited about that. But let's jump into it. Let's give us a little bit about yourself that we can share with the audience.
Oh, absolutely. So thank you so much for having me. It's absolutely a pleasure. I know we've been talking about doing this for a while, so I'm excited that we finally get to do this and have this conversation. So my name is Alethe Denis, and I am a senior security consultant on the Red Team at Bishop Fox. I have been with Bishop Fox now for nearly 2 years. And prior to that, I worked for a company called Critical Insight out of the Pacific Northwest that focused on securing and helping to protect critical infrastructure and a lot of public entities, not private companies, along with hospitals and healthcare organizations. Now I get to focus a lot more on larger organizations with much more evolved and mature security programs, i.e., more hardened targets. And so I think I spent the first several months at Bishop Fox kind of just getting my rear handed to me, which was refreshing to have a new challenge, frankly, because a lot of those organizations on the public sector side of things and just healthcare in general, they are severely under-resourced, understaffed, and their security programs are not quite as mature. So I was born and raised in South Africa by American parents, and I originally went to school for chemical and molecular sciences with a minor in computer science. I started coding in high school using Turbo Pascal, and I took a deep detour away from the industry to make a series of very unfortunate personal life decisions. But through the course of my employment in other industries and having the opportunity to learn a lot of really great peopling skills through a lot of failing up, I was able to make the transition back into information technology when my husband and I started an ISP or an IT MSP back in the early 2010 timeframe. And so he and I were running this IT MSP. He did a lot of the boots on the ground. I pretty much ran everything else, including support, et cetera. And we determined that security was probably pretty important for our clients. And as we all really know well now, that vendor, security and risk program is very critical to organizations. But at the time, it was still kind of a new concept. So we're like, we need to be more secure. We need to advise our clients a lot more clearly on how to be secure. And so through that, we learned of a conference called DEF CON, which is the world's largest hacking conference, and it happens in Vegas every year.
What is it called again?
That word Kevin? On your
Never
shirt.
Heard of it. Never. Oh, DEF CON. Yeah. Okay. By the way, it is not canceled this year.
Yeah, I heard it's actually still canceled.
It got canceled again. Dang it! They go back and forth so much. I
Got
can't keep
canceled
track.
again. Yeah, don't bother.
Okay.
It got canceled and then uncanceled, but now canceled again. So anyway,
Yeah, well,
the running joke was not funny in 2020 when it actually was
Yeah,
canceled.
I know, right?
But for a long time, that's been the LOL on the Twitterverse prior to it changing names was like DEF CON was canceled. So when they came out with the canceled shirt, I like simultaneously wanted to cry and laugh
Yeah,
at
right.
the same time. But anyway, that conference really is at the center of my transition into cybersecurity from that more traditional IT type universe. As a result of going to that conference, I learned about several competitions, and I'm mildly competitive as a human. And so I decided to participate in those, but I'm probably getting a little bit too deep into the weeds for this stage of the conversation.
well, let me add one comment to that. I was rolling with everything you were saying. I mean, you kind of blew my mind when you started going off on all of the areas that you started in school and what you were going to become in school. And you was combining these very complicated subjects, right? And then I about threw up when you said Turbo Pascal.
I know.
Oh, I remember that back in the day.
Yep, this was in the 90s.
Oh my gosh,
so like,
that was the worst.
And what's crazy is, my school was an all-girls school. And so that they had a coding class was huge. And I was actually in the first year of that coding class at that school, like the youngest grade to have access to it.
Wow.
Prior to that, they just used their computer lab for typing classes.
Oh, God, bummer.
And so this was a really pivotal point during the 90s where there was this shift that, people were starting to see that technology and the IT universe was going to hold a lot of jobs for this emerging workforce and this emerging talent that was still in high school or even elementary school. And South Africa is actually the only country in the continent of Africa that is considered a first world country. And so I had a cell phone in the mid 90s with internet access.
Wow.
Most people in the United States didn't have a cell phone, let alone as a teenager, until well after like the 2001 timeframe. So they were pretty far along technologically. And while Turbo Pascal was barf, it did give everybody the foundation in like how like syntax is important and how logic works, and the foundational programming concepts like loops and if then and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, if you've ever had any
absolutely.
database experience or played around with SQL or learned how to write SQL queries, it's like you've never looked back on that time in your career in IT and said, I should have never learned that. Because we use that so often and so frequently now that you look back on it, you're like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
And at high school, I one of my elective classes was typing. And I thought, oh, this is a blow-off class. The only reason I'm taking this is because it's it's going to be a shit show of a class. I'm going to go in there. I'm basically going to sleep through it. I don't care about this.
Kill it.
My teacher, though, she was so hardcore about it, man. She made us, she made us like focus to try to hit so many words per minute. We had to try to beat our last scores. And to this day, I still look back on that, and I think the best class I ever took in that level of my education, because of what I do today, was typing. Because to this day, I still actually can type super fast.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got stories about that too, but I won't go there. But I will tell you this: I'll one-up you on all of that. And it is, back in the day, I actually did assembly language.
Oh, wow.
And assembly language is one step removed from just writing everything in ones and zeros.
Right.
So that was crazy. But just the other day, I was doing some AI coding, and I was reminded in the strategies that I used in assembly.
Mm-hmm.
I was reminded of that through some of the patterns that I was creating in my AI coding. I'm like, it's
Foundational.
interesting
Yeah,
how
and how it just
everything comes back.
carries forward. And
Yeah.
you just keep wrapping new shells of knowledge around this existing baseline that you set, which is pretty neat. And it's funny that you mentioned typing as like one of the most important things, because I always say, like, they don't pay me to break into buildings, like they pay me to write the report.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I do the rest of it for fun.
God, that
Nice.
as fun
That's
as
a
that
good
would
statement.
be, it would be so nerve-wracking, though. I mean,
It's
they
absolute
yeah.
insanity.
Can't you
The
still?
anxiety for weeks beforehand is like through
Oh
the
my
roof.
God, yeah.
And then on the day of, I just want to like throw up. Like, I can't eat anything. I can't sleep the night before. And then it's like you're usually like in a hotel room,
Yeah.
trying to plan
Yeah.
your whole thing out.
Strategizing.
And then, you're like, I didn't remember my pillow. And I'm like, old, I have to take my pillow places now with me, or I'm like lost as far as like being able to sleep. And then it's like, well, I picked the wrong hotel because it's super noisy and now I can't sleep. And then it's like the next day you just got to like pound the latte and get the job done.
Suck it up and fight through it all,
Wow.
right? Well, okay, so I want to quickly take a step back. We're not going to rewind all the way back to the full childhood and everything, but let's take a couple steps back. You mentioned growing up in Africa, but you ended up here in the States and found out about DEF CON. Can you talk a little bit to that and kind of what brought you here and all of that good stuff, so that we can get to the meat of this, which is you discover DEF CON, you walk into the village, you see something that really grabs you, takes hold of you, and it's talking to your soul saying, Alethe, you've got to do this. And you're like, I'm so going to do this. So just how did you go from Africa to here? I mean, at what age were you, and that sort of thing?
Sure. So I was enrolled at the University of Cape Town, and UCT is probably the Harvard of the Southern Hemisphere. I was doing the classes for chemical and molecular sciences and trying to keep up with computer science classes and trying to manage just being 18, which at the time was really tough for me. I was diagnosed with depression, but what I've learned much later was essentially that I had ADHD and anxiety as a result of ADHD, and that manifested in the form of just super self-destructive behavior and what looked to the grown-ups like me not applying myself in college. And I have the tendency to just like stuff the entire thing if I'm not able to do it 100%. And so I ended up dropping out of school, and my father and my stepmother are my parents there in Africa, and my mother lives here in the United States. And so at the time we had a conversation, and it just made the most sense for me to try to go out on my own as a young adult in the United States. There's just a lot more opportunity and a lot less risk safety-wise for me to do that. And so in 2001, I was almost 19. I moved from South Africa to Northern California. And I ended up just taking the first retail job that I could. And I worked my way through several positions within a title insurance company after I did like 18 months or so working at a retail pet store, which I loved, by the way. It was so great.
Awesome.
The money was terrible. So I was, having to support myself and pay rent and, buy food and all the things. And so a friend of mine got a job typing policies at this title company. And I was like, well, I just want to work with my friend. And so I ended up begging for a job, and they put me in database entry. And then I worked my way up through all these positions. But then the real estate market completely dropped out, and they were doing a lot of cuts. I determined that it was probably best for me to get back into an area that was technology focused. And so I decided to quit, and I left, and I moved about an hour down the hill from where I had been living into the Central Valley. And that is where I have been since 2007. And then shortly after that, I ended up getting divorced. I know I skipped over the marriage and everything. But I ended up getting divorced from my first husband, and he and I just had very different goals in life. And when you marry somebody that you met when you were 20 and they were 19, those things can happen. And so I ended up going to work for the Death Star, AT&T.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
I led audit and compliance for retail stores in my area underneath the, director level folks, and received a lot of really positive feedback for the work that I did there. I also found several ways that people could rob AT&T blind and made them aware of those things. And during this time frame, I met my current husband. We got married, and then we had our first kid, and then he had been working for an ISP, which is why the misspoken words there at the start, but he was working for an ISP in the Bay Area, and I was working for the Death Star. And his position was being outsourced, and then they were pulling it back, and then they were outsourcing it here and terminating him, and they just kept doing this like crazy chaotic reorganization of this ISP as it got went through this buyout and that buyout and this buyout. So he had started the IT MSP as a means of having additional income, but it ended up being his primary gig when he decided to leave the ISP. And so around 2015, I lost my job at a startup that I was working at the time. We just had our second kid, and I decided to go to DEF CON based on the stories that I was hearing from one of our engineers for the IT MSP. And he was like, yeah, we really need to go to this. It's like super important. Like, this is, you can go to all these InfoSec conferences, but like DEF CON is where like the real stuff gets shared. And I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting. And my husband had heard about it for a few years. He'd gone to like CES and Comdex and like all that kind of stuff, but he'd never been to like really any of the information security conferences, because that was like so far outside of the IT realm that he was working in, like his specialty at the time. And so we decided to go to DEF CON, and I was like a brunette. Like, that's how long ago this was. And like, to be fair, my hair hasn't been like its natural color since I was 12. But anyway, the point is, I was like, I've always been a dork. Like, there's nerds and then there's dorks. Like, I was into magic cards, and I did like all the dork things. I collected all the things. I mean, like, I have like a giant like Marvel. You can see it over here. I have like a Marvel canvas with like all the characters. I have statues. I'm a like total dork.
That's awesome.
And so I felt like so at home at DEF CON. It was ridiculous, because it was like, you spend your 20s trying to conform to what everybody thinks is cool and what you're expected to do and like try to fit in. And then you spend your 30s like paying for it.
Yeah.
And then like what I'm finding now is like your 40s are all about just being like, screw you, I'm going to dress like I want to. And I think I'm like, right. And so like in my 30s was when I found DEF CON, and it was kind of like, oh, wow, like there are other people who found that freedom. Like, I don't have to be this idea of what people expect that I should be. Like, I can explore the things that are really interesting to me and just dork out on it and like not give a crap what anybody else thinks. And so I always describe DEF CON as kind of like the island of misfit toys, and like I am one, and I'm so glad that I found them all, because it's like a place that I can go every year and just be completely 100% my authentic self, which is rare, I think, for most adults, especially in the professional world.
Out in the dorkiverse.
And that doesn't just mean being drunk in a fountain by noon, okay? It means
that's
like
just Jason. That's just
really
Jason.
Go after like things that you're interested in learning, and then meeting the people that have similar interests, because I don't think you really learn the thing at DEF CON. Like, you're too busy going from person to person and meeting this person and checking this out and whatever. It's like the friendships that you create and like the learnings that you get out of those connections and those friendships, and whether you work together later or, have an opportunity to learn something about what their area of like specialization is through them. Like it can be a number of different ways that happens. But anyway, so
well, you're saying something.
yeah.
You're saying something that makes a lot of sense that I gravitated to. So Kevin and I are also part of a larger podcasting network called the CyberSecurity network that we just started this past year. And one of the reasons for that, and the difference with that network over what we do individually, is that network does all live events, live podcast shows. And what we notice by doing these live shows is exactly that, is that community of people that come out that feel like your people, right? And you can relate to them on a totally different plane and get deep into these conversations that only that community understands.
Yeah, and if you don't show up live to participate, like you miss out. And I think there was a podcast a while ago that was founded by a friend of mine who unfortunately is no longer with us, but he kind of incorporated that live studio audience type feel into his podcasts as well. And it just gave a whole nother level. Like, you know, if I say something interesting and people want to know more about that, then they could like put it into the chat and we could, you know, have a little mini sidebar about it. And it was kind of neat. It also made sure that I was like in an episode for 3 hours at a time because I don't know when to stop. But at the same time, I find that like organic spark of a conversation just so interesting. And it does really give it like another layer of authenticity when people are just live and completely unedited. But yeah, I think with DEF CON specifically, people have a variety of different perspectives. People have a lot of different perspectives about DEF CON, and that's just because of their own experience. I am very fortunate that my experience has been so positive. And it really comes down to who I surround myself with and the people that I spend my time with and the relationships that I give energy to and the, you know, friendships that I nurture through that conference. And so DEF CON is really what you make of it. If you don't like it, then try a different part of it, or try being with different people, finding a new tribe. For example, you know, I originally thought maybe lock sport was my thing, and I do love it. I'm not like especially amazing at it, but I do love it. And then so I dabbled in that for a while. And then the first DEF CON that I went to, which was DEF CON 24, you know, we walked around to all the villages. My husband and I went with our engineer friend / employee, and we walked around to every village just to see what it was. Because there's no, like, all the contests and everything, like the call for participants, the call for everything happened months before DEF CON, and we were in no way prepared to like contribute. So it was really like the first time was just getting the lay of the land, figuring out what's what, seeing what looks interesting, and then you know how to like make your list of priorities for the next year. And so we were, I think it was like Bally's and some other place at DEF CON 24 that was kind of like all where the main stuff was happening. And so we were walking through a hallway, and it was kind of like one of those ones where all the goons are yelling at you to make a hole, like stay to the right. And then we just like found this open doorway, and we're like, what is this? And so I stuck my head inside, and I was like, what is going on here? And they had somebody that was like in a soundproof booth, like kind of messing around, but not like actively making calls or anything. And I was like, what is this about? And so we went inside, and they kind of explained to us what Social Engineering Village was about. And just that, you know, my engineer told me like they have competitions where they just throw people into this booth and make them call people to get information. And I was like, that sounds absolutely terrifying. Like, scared. I could never do that. And so I was like, but I want to watch it. And they were like, well, you know, all the competitions are done for this year, but if you come back next year, because I think it was already like Sunday or Saturday afternoon or something like that. And so the next year I made that my mission to come back and watch them all. And then the third DEF CON was the year that I competed first. And the fourth DEF CON was the year that I won that competition. And received the black badge from DEF CON for the win of that contest. But like, that was 5 years ago. And so
Wow.
it's
Yeah.
like so much has transpired since that competition
Yeah.
to where I will be forever grateful for all of the opportunities that I have had come out of that experience, to the folks that made it possible from every direction, and the folks that helped me along the way through that journey to find the information that I needed and become, more proficient at eliciting information and, participating in OSINT competitions so that I could get better and acquire new skills. I went to DerbyCon the year that I won the SECTF at DEF CON. I went to DerbyCon. It was like about a month later. I took a 4-month-old baby with me to Derby.
Oh my gosh.
I took a 3-month-old baby with me to DEF CON. And so she and I flew by ourselves and went out to DerbyCon, and I actually competed in an OSINT competition there. And I had my rear handed to me. There were some really compelling, just astoundingly awesome competitors, but also I was really stressed because I was trying to manage basically what amounted to like a 6-hour competition with a baby.
Yeah. I'd be
and so I would have to
crazy.
stop and take care of her, take her to the bathroom and change her, feed her, that kind of stuff. And it really messed up my mental state because I was so worried about her that I couldn't get in the game. And so then it was rough. I didn't come in last, but I was close. And so after that, I was I really need to get better at the tactics. How do I find this stuff? Because I know how to find public record data, but how do I find people data and how do I find company data? And so I really invested a lot of time in competing in those types of competitions as well. And so just having that broader set of humans in the contest environment to observe and learn new tactics and new strategies is also really helpful. And just surrounding yourself with people that are doing that kind of stuff, whether it's at DEF CON or a B-Sides or, some other type of conference, or within DEF CON groups, if you have a local group, can be very helpful just to opening your mind to new ideas and new possibilities, and then giving you that first taste that you need to go then do the rest of the research and the investigation yourself.
Well, you said something too that I want us to dig into. But so what you were saying is the mental state, and talking a little bit about that. So I think let's take a break here, and then we'll come back and we'll dig more into that mental state, a little bit more about what some of the social engineering aspects that you have to go through in order to successfully pull off one of these, these projects. And then we'll just keep getting deeper.
Sounds
into
good.
it. So what do you think?
Sounds great.
Ready to go? All right. OSINT, open source intelligence, is a critical phase of social engineering. To shut down vulnerabilities and improve resiliency, organizations need to test their security operations before threat actors do. Red team operations are arguably one of the best ways to do so. Welcome back, everyone, and we're having a fascinating discussion today with Alethe, and I really am so interested in a lot of the things that you shared with us in this first segment around the mental capacity necessary to perform the job and how do you prepare for it and all of those things. And I do think that where I want to go next is looking at, in your current role today with Bishop Fox, the steps that you take in the role that you play in order to be successful at what you do. I think that's going to unveil for us a lot of what it really takes to succeed at doing a job like this. So with that, Alethe, why don't you share with us a little about that?
Sure. So in my current role at Bishop Fox, I get to dabble in multiple types of assessments. And in addition to those assessments, I also get to contribute to our tabletop facilitations and leading more red team, like attack simulation themed tabletops for our clients. But the most fun that I usually get to have is in the context of the physical security assessments. And for those, that means, boots on the ground, face to face social engineering, which can be incredibly scary,
Got that.
especially if you don't feel like you're adequately prepared. So there's, there's several different types of engagements that use social engineering. And so depending upon which type of, social engineering type vector you're trying to exploit or use to exploit a human, it's going to take a different type of skill from that same pool of social engineering skills. So with email phishing, basically you're focused on trying to craft a message that will get that knee-jerk response or trigger a reaction for that person to do something, either click a link or download an attachment or open a thing that is bad. And so for that, it's a lot more passive, because you can craft that message and take your time with it until you get it right. And that's something that having experience with like pay-per-click marketing and email marketing and that kind of stuff can be super valuable, to be able to put the right call to action in there and get the person to do the thing, or to invoke the right emotion to get them to take the action. But you have time to come up with that strategy and like lay the groundwork and then, smooth things out before you send the message. Same with, text message phishing or any other text-based style phishing. But when you're talking about phone or voice phishing or in person, that is a lot more dynamic in nature, and you have to be prepared to do things, very much on the fly. And so as far as the skills go, a lot of the skills that I use over the phone for phishing or face-to-face for social engineering, those are skills that I learned from doing jobs that were customer facing, from interacting with people at, a variety of different levels within my own organization and supporting customers and clients outside of my organization, and figuring out how to frame things in the right way and how to deliver bad news in the right way. And those skills are tough to teach. It's something that really comes out of experience, in my opinion, and just putting yourself in situations where you have an opportunity to test, like A/B marketing test how you respond and like the result of that, or learning how to read the room and try to navigate or negotiate your way around tricky conversations or tricky deliveries, because that is exactly what you're going to have to do face to face, because it's almost impossible to script a phone call when it comes to social engineering, but it's even more impossible to like, hold on, let me refer to my notes really quick.
Yeah.
What did I say I was going to do here if they said they would do this? Like, if you're standing in front of somebody, you have to be prepared to like immediately respond as if it's natural, while you're trying to hold up this like
stressful
mask of who you're pretending to be. And just, it is incredibly anxiety inducing if you haven't exposed yourself to those kind of situations a lot.
A master of
for
facade.
sure, man. That's crazy. That's crazy. So you said a couple things there, but I mean, the whole idea of the pretext, it seems like, okay, when you're doing OSINT for something that you're going to do in a competition, or you're going to do even behind the phone, you're doing it for a customer, and it's all part of a social engineering test that you're doing for a client. It's one thing to be able to do that OSINT and get your list of all of your facts in front of you and to define your pretext, know exactly what you're going to do and what you're going to say in every scenario, and to be able to refer to that. Even on a phone, that wouldn't be too terribly bad to do. But like you're saying, on these physical pen tests where you're social engineering maybe a security guard or somebody like that, oh my God, I can't even imagine the stress involved in that when they completely throw you a curveball that you weren't expecting, and your pretext is here. Everything's up here.
Yeah.
Right? So you kind of have to think, okay,
Actually, I have a good story for that one.
Yeah, well, please tell it. Share it. Sure. I want to hear that.
So I had an engagement, and I have to redact things as I talk. So if there's staggers here, it's because I'm trying to find different words that won't reveal who the client was or anything like,
I like
that.
Automatic redaction in action.
It's real-time redaction.
Tell us if we need to beep anything later, okay?
No, I think we'll be fine. But a utility company, they came to us. They had 2 different types of locations they wanted us to test. So one of the types of locations was essentially like a service and construction yard that supported the utility company and their customers and would dispatch technicians and, had all the work trucks, so to speak. And then the other location was like their legitimate headquarters. This building is open 24/7. It's never closed. And it has some of the most amazing security I've ever gone up against. And so they had us test the headquarter building, and they have essentially these revolving door man traps, like the rotating man trap doors, and they're badged access. So you have to badge in, but you also have to badge out. And there's like sensors in it to make sure that nobody tailgates, there's no piggybacking, there's no duplicate badge scans. It's like nuts. And so I was like thoroughly perplexed. Like, I was scared. And so they're like, you need to figure out how to get into this building and then get to the 5th floor. And we have, badged access on all the stairwells. We have badged access on all of the elevator, like lobbies in front of the elevators. They had even doors within the different departments that had badge access on it, and it was all badge in, badge out. Like no, but you could at least tailgate on the interior doors. So I was like, well, there's that. But like, how do I get through this exterior perimeter was like the biggest problem. And the other way that I could have gotten in was through this lobby. And the lobby was big. And if the building is multiple stories, the lobby went up like vaulted ceiling style so that the other levels could actually look down and observe the lobby. So many sets of eyes.
Okay.
But they also had optical turnstiles where they have like a little, gate that goes down that you could totally hop over, but they have optical sensors that if you do hop over them, they'll send off an alarm. And so the client was trying to get additional budget for the service yards. They wanted to prove that all the security at the headquarters was working. So they knew that they were setting us up for failure, basically. But we were going to give it our best effort. So he's like, oh yeah, you could just totally jump over this little 3-foot wall next to the turnstile and get in through the lobby. I mean, no big deal. And I'm like, have you ever thought about what would happen as you sat in a lobby that you were charged with protecting and observed a full-grown adult hop a wall? Like, that is completely out of the realm of normal. It's going to call attention immediately. Yeah. Like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to hop a wall and go unnoticed because it stands out. Just like grown-ups running in public. Like, my kids are always like, come on, let's run there. And I'm like, no, you can run, but I'm not going to, because adults that run make other adults nervous.
I like that.
And so it's like, what's going on? And so I was like,
I've never heard that one, but that's perfect.
It's true though. Like a full-grown adult running, like that attracts attention.
Well, it's like those videos where you see people run, like act shocked and run in one direction. It forces other people to freak out and go, "Oh God, I gotta get away."
There's that ripple effect, just like everybody looking up and everybody else looks up.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, the lobby is a no-go. They had security guard, they had a receptionist. Honestly, I'm more scared of the receptionist. And then they had the back doors that were the revolving man traps where most of the employees were coming from like a parking garage across like a road into a building and getting through that revolving door man trap, but they had two side by side, which is not ideal for me because the only way that I can bypass this thing is if somebody else scans their badge for me and they like let me go in and then they scan their badge for themselves and then they go into the next segment. So it's not piggybacking, it's not tailgating, it's not, anything other than like somebody scanned their badge
Right.
twice, which I had to pray there wasn't like some set alert to find that. And so I ended up sitting out in front of the back door, basically, of this building between the parking garage and an area that was kind of used for breaks and just observing the employees. And to get there, I didn't want to drive a car onto their parking lot because I knew they had license plate readers and I didn't want to seem suspicious and I didn't want my license plate read or, to have anything that could connect me, like if I tried to come back later, that would like alert them that I was back. So I had a rideshare company drop me off at the business next door. And then I walked over and I walked around the parking garage. So it looked like I was coming from the parking garage when I headed over across this break area. And I like took my headphones and sat down and just pretended that like I was taking a call outside of the office just to get a break from my desk or something like that. And so I sat there like scrolling social media and just like observing people and saying hi and being friendly and pretending like I worked there. And like when I woke up that morning, like I worked there.
Yeah.
That was my job. And I was supposed to be there. And I had to like internalize that. And that skill can be very difficult for people. It seems easy. You're like, whatever. But when you're actually in a position where there are people all around you and you know you don't belong, it can elevate your anxiety and your stress levels to where you give yourself away. And so I had to like get comfortable with being there. And my presence was designed to make them comfortable with me being there. And so after, sitting there for about an hour or so, I figured like my lunch break's over. I got to head back in or it's going to start to look weird. And so there was a group of people coming back to the office and I figured I'm going to sandwich myself in between two like smaller groups of people. And then I'm going to make myself an obstacle to the people behind me getting back to work. Because if two people go through and then I try to scan a badge to get in and it doesn't work because I had a badge, but it obviously didn't work, then maybe I can encourage the people that are being inconvenienced behind me to scan a badge for me and let me in. And so I just like swiped the badge, made myself a physical obstacle to them getting to the door and blocked them. And then just like looked really helpless and pathetic trying to get this badge that I knew wouldn't work to work, even though I knew it wouldn't work.
That's also an art.
To try to get
helpless and pathetic.
That sympathy.
Jason's good at it.
Yes. And so like, I mean, the whole point is that I'm trying to be like damsel in distress.
Yeah. That's crazy.
And unfortunately, we live in a world where bias exists. And so I'm trying to exploit that bias. And so I had, several people that just like walked around me and went to the second door, which was awful for me because it just meant that I was standing there like an idiot.
You stupid rule followers, you.
I was like, why? Like if there'd been one door and I'd inconvenienced like 20 people, it would have been much more likely for somebody to just be like, let me scan my badge, you go sort this out with security or whatever. And so this older gentleman, he kind of like took pity on me and he started to like reach forward to like scan his badge. He's like, you know what, and like as he was reaching forward, like he was like literally this far from the reader. And he looks through the glass of the door and he sees one of the security guards standing there. And he's just like, you know what, actually, I think you should probably go to, sort it out with security. And I think that security guard there has already clocked you. And I was like, clocked me? That sounds aggressive. So I was like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And so I'm like trying not to panic. I'm trying to just continue to look helpless and confused. and like a couple of other people come over and be like, well, maybe if you try to scan it this way, or like rub it that way, or like flip it over, and like I'm just trying all these stupid things.
Spit
And so
on
it's
it.
like
Throw
getting
it against the wall.
increasingly awkward for me to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'll blow on it. But anyway, so I'm like, all right, like what am I gonna do here? Like, do I bail, or do I like continue to insist and then end up in the lap of the security guard? Like, so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna abort. And so I was like, you know what? No problem. Like, don't stress. I'll walk around to the lobby and I'll get them to take care of it. I had no intention of going to the lobby. I was going to just bail and try again tomorrow. And so, anyway, so I start like walking away, and it's a pretty long building. So I've like walked a good 50 feet away, and the security guard comes out of the building, and he's like standing in this like community space, and he like shouts at me to come over.
Oh, he totally had clocked you then, huh?
Right? You'd think. And so he has a gun, so I'm not going to say no.
Yeah.
So I knew that they were armed guards, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to die. So I'm like, okay. So I turn around, I walk back, and I'm like, hey. And he's like, so what's going on? And I'm like, I'm new. It's my second day. And yesterday, like, they walked me around, so I didn't have to use my badge, but it looks like it's not working, and I don't know what to do. So I was just going to walk around to the lobby, and he's like, you know what? Don't do that. Just come with me. I'll take you to the front. I'll badge you through so you don't have to walk all the way around this super huge building.
Wow.
This is the security
Yes.
guard?
And so the
It's
security,
always the security guard.
So anyway, so he's like walking me through like this door, and then through to the next layer, and then through to the like area behind the turnstiles.
And you're like, can you get me up
and
to
then
level
out
5?
of the turnstiles back into the public lobby. So I was like, I was in,
Wow.
but I couldn't do anything.
That's crazy.
So like on the walk, he's like, what's going on? Oh, you're new. What department? He's like asking me all these questions. And it was at that point that I realized how freaking unprepared I was.
Yeah.
I was like, oh shoot, like darn it, like I didn't memorize these things that would have been so helpful right now. And whereas when I'm on like a phone phishing call, I can just look down at my notes and be like, this is my boss, this is my number, this is where I work, this is my group, this, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's all like right there, because I always like have a little sheet. I even did this in the contest where I had like a 4 square, and I had like, who am I? Who are they? What do I need? What have I got? And that really helps to have right in front of you. But in this case, I was just like, and so I was sure that he had totally like figured out that I was full of it. I was certain that I was blown. So I was just trying to be polite enough to not completely have to like pull out my get out of jail free letter, because I won't pull that sucker out unless I'm literally getting cuffed. Like I will not. I have to like maintain the pretext until I'm going to jail. Literally.
You just answered a question that I wrote down a second ago, because I was going to ask you about if you had a way out had you gotten caught.
Yeah. So side tangent, but yes, we do have get out of jail free letters. Okay. And what this is a letter that says, yes, we hired this person. This is their name, and they are authorized to perform this test. Please don't send them to jail. Please call me. And it's from usually an executive that can be present on the day of to sort of save your life from the person that caught you, and not call the cops. And sometimes they do call the cops, and then you're like in cuffs. Like I've been detained several times, which is sort of fun when I get to like try to reach and get the letter out.
Wait,
like,
I gotta get out of jail free here. You gotta let me get to this.
I love getting caught, because then I get to be like, ha ha ha, and like run away.
Yeah.
I don't think
get
so,
these things
buddy.
Off.
So anyway, like I'm sitting up there in the lobby, and the one security guard passes me off to the other one, who I will lovingly refer to as RoboCop. And he decides that he is going to prove that I am full of it. And so, and meanwhile, the person that's charged with managing reception is like super skeptical and like giving me the side eye, like, what's your name? Let me look you up. No, you're not in the system, kind of a thing. And I was like, yeah, I'm dead meat. And so the security guard comes around the podium and he grabs the badge. It's like on a little like elastic thing. Like it is branded with the company's name, because the point of contact gave me the like loop for my belt loop. And but we fabricated the badges. And so the badges look like the real ones, but they aren't. And of course, they don't have like the right, things in them to make the doors
Right.
open. So the security guard grabs the badge and he's just like, "Where did you get this?" And I'm just like, well, my boss gave it to me. And he's like, "No, they didn't. This isn't one of our badges." And he goes and pops it off of the thing and takes it from me. And I was like, "Damn, dude."
RoboCop.
And he's like,
Angry.
"Yes." He's like 4 inches shorter than me too, so I don't think that helped his feelings on the situation. But anyway, he was like, "I am going to like prove that you are a bad guy." So he rips the thing off my belt loop and he like walks around to like try to do something with it and figure out whether or not it's authentic. And then finally I had to like, surrender and just call the point of contact to come rescue me. I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "Well, who gave this to you?" And I was like, "This person." And it was like the point of contact. So they send the point of contact down to like find me in the lobby. And he's like, "Hey, how'd it go?" I was like, "It went great." And so he like walks me out the front and he's like, "So where'd you park?" I'm like, "I didn't." He's all smart. And he just kind of like, "She's good. Just don't worry about it." And let me walk out the door. And then I like called a rideshare company to come get
That's
me.
too funny.
Like, "Rescue, please." So the
Oh,
getaway car
wow.
was a rideshare from the front door of the
Wow.
lobby. And I was working with another teammate and they were on the other side of the building. And I was really hoping that I created enough of a distraction for them to get in. And there was an opportunity where like a door opened, but it was like they would have been confronted immediately by another badge door. And so it didn't work out. But like I just messaged them and I was like, "Hey, I got caught. Do not come to where I am. Like, don't associate yourself with me. I'm fleeing the scene of the crime."
Playing the scene.
And so we like met back and regrouped elsewhere, so that they would be allowed to go back and try another attempt. Because
Oh,
honestly,
sure.
like once they've caught one of us, they think the jig is up. They think it's done. The test is done. They passed. So I'm like, if we go back the same day, like it has to be you, but like let's do this, because now we know like more about the process. But what's crazy is that after the fact, I talked to the point of contact a couple days later, and he talked to the security guard and was like, "Hey, what was up with that lady? What was going on with that badge situation?" And the security the guard bought my story. He believed me. And so I made this assumption that I was blown like an idiot. And I could have said, "Can you take me to the 5th floor to my
Oh my
boss
gosh.
and
Yeah.
achieve the objective?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, "Can you escort me
Yeah.
up to the floor?" And then I would have had like a
Yeah.
full access badge
Yeah.
escort to where I was going.
Yeah.
But because I didn't have like the right people from that department that would be there on that day that, they could take me to, that like I didn't have enough, because they were working in like a ultra hybrid type model where people were only in the office like 2 days a week. So yeah, it was tough. Like most of the building was empty. And so being a person in a building that's mostly empty is already,
Yeah.
not ideal because you stand out more,
Much
especially if you're
harder
not
to blend
known.
in, huh?
But yeah, and we were limited. The scope of the engagement limited us to a pretext where we were posing as a former employee who had a deactivated badge with no access, but they wanted to see if we could get back into the building. So I couldn't just be like, "Oh, I'm a florist," and "Can I drop this off on their desk?" I have to take a picture of the desk.
Your best bet at that point would have been, because let's say the same situation in real life, your best bet at that point would have been to say, "Yeah, I report to," pick a name, someone in the directory that wouldn't know you.
Yeah.
And you're taking the chance that they're not going to call that person and they're just going to walk you up
and
to
that's
them,
what I think I should have done, is just say, "Yeah, I need to go to marketing to my boss. This person, can you just walk me up there?" And then just getting there was the objective. Because what they wanted to test was, could a former employee without access, but who held on to their badge that was deactivated, like a involuntary termination, could that person get back into this department and cause a scene or create an incident?
Right.
And so just getting there would have allowed me to do that.
I can see where serious improv
yeah.
skills
Still,
could
the
come in
weakest
handy
link
here.
in the weakest link is the weakest link in that whole situation was the security guard.
Yeah.
There.
The human.
It was human
It's
error.
always, it always
And
is,
the
right?
only way that I could have bypassed all the technology was with a
Yeah.
human giving me that badge to get in and the badge through the building. I mean, once I got through the exterior, if I hadn't have been confronted by a security guard, there were several ways that I could have like hung out here and then tailgate into this part, catch an elevator, get off the elevator. Okay, hang out here, now try to tailgate into that part, and kind of like,
Yeah.
stepping stone my way through. But their perimeter was pretty legit.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the security guard did his job. He delivered me to a public lobby, and their other RoboCop security guard, who takes his job very seriously, he was able to prove and very passionately throw me out the door. So it was great for them. I mean, it was fun
Yeah.
for me. I kicked myself for quite a few days afterward because I didn't think of that pivot point in the moment. Kind of like when you have an argument
Yeah.
with somebody and you think about it, like really great comeback, and then you didn't get a chance to exercise it.
Yeah.
So it's similar to that, but at the same time, I did steal 10 of their trucks.
What? You stole truck.
Yes.
Oh,
And like not one,
yeah,
but
as if,
10.
as if one wouldn't have been enough.
Yeah. Right.
I know.
So we had
Oh, man.
like our second location that we were testing was that service yard with the construction and like a service building where they would dispatch technicians and stuff
She
from.
found the key room.
And they
She
had
found the
all
key
of their
room.
company vehicles for that area in that yard. Well, they wanted to prove that someone could steal these vehicles and that they were not being adequately secured. They had like chain link fence with automatic rolling gates, the barbed wire spoolie deals on the top, and then on the wall side
the official
they
name for
had
those, by
a
the
lot
way.
of those.
If you go to buy
it's very
that at
technical. I mean, you can look
your
it up.
local hardware store,
That's what you Google.
spoolie stuff for the fence. Yeah.
I've been informed that saying Googling things is like for old people, and that I should now say search it up. So
I'm officially
just
willing
sharing that
to
for you.
accept the fact that I'm an old person then, because I say it daily.
Ditto.
Yeah.
So anyway, they had a wall on one side that had all those anti-hopping spikes on it, like the really aggressive like spikes. And so my coworker and I were tasked with breaking into the service yard and proving that we could steal the trucks. And so they had the building, and then they had an entrance on one side that had a security guard stationed in like a little security booth at the gate. And then on the other side of the building, they had the exit gate. And this was just exit only for the trucks that were leaving to go do service calls or dispatches or construction or whatever. And so we were able to like observe the building and figure out what all was in place as far as the physical security of the building. And it was the same badge system that was used at the headquarters. So we were like, oh, do we really want to try that again? Not really. And so even though they were just like man doors as opposed to the revolving like man traps, I was just like, no, it's like, it's such a small office. It's like too intimate not to stand out, because it's just this one like satellite service yard. It's not a very big building. There's not a lot of people here, and they were still like ultra hybrid. So there's even less people there. And so there's cameras all over the place. There's a guard monitoring the cameras, and there's a very small parking lot. And so I was like, we can't hover here for too long because it's going to look weird. But like, we need to get in the fence to where the trucks are. And so my coworker was like, okay, we're going to go to like the, the home improvement store. We're going to buy like a welcome mat. We're going to throw it over the spikes. And then you and I are going to hop over this 8-foot wall. And I was like, okay, can we revisit the part where I said I'm old? I was like, I don't think there's any universe where my almost 6 foot tall self is going to be able to hop a wall with a ladder and a piece of carpet in broad daylight. I mean, nighttime, let alone broad daylight, and not be noticed by the security guard on the side that they are stationed.
Wow.
Like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I was like, let's just go through the gate. So we sat outside the exit gate and we noted that it would actually take about 30-ish or so seconds to roll back shut after a vehicle would exit. And the way that things were positioned, it was like the gate, and then next to the gate was like a mini carport for motorcycles. And then the side of the building had like a little sidewalk, and that had a little path to go to the gate. And so I was like, there's trees here. There's like a gate for people to walk through, but it was locked. I was like, where are my lock picks now?
Yeah.
And then there was the rolling gate. And I was like, wouldn't it just be amazing if we could like get in and out without contacting anyone, steal all the trucks, and not have to even pick a lock? Like, we're doing this. And so like the first service truck starts to go to the gate to come out as we're sitting there, and I'm like grabbing the door handle, like, let's just go, like, YOLO. Let's go. And my coworker's like, wait, you're going right now? And I'm like, yes, we're going right now. Like, I don't know when the next truck's coming out. Like, it's getting towards the end of the day. We knew most of like this job position, these people were typically scheduled like 6 to 3, and it was like already around 3. I'm like, everybody's gonna be leaving, and I don't know if anybody else is gonna be leaving after this person. So like, let's go. Like, you've got to take the opportunity that you identify in the moment. And so he's like, well, I don't know about that. And I'm like, okay, fine. Listen, we'll wait till the next one. But the next one, like, I'm going in. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to get out. I'll pretend I'm on the phone, and I'll just pace on that side of the building. So I'm right next to the gate. That way, when it's rolling shut, the car is gone. I can go like across where the motorcycle like carport is and not be seen by the truck that's about to come out. And then when they move, then I can slip in. And he's like, yeah, you do that. I'm going to go check out the wall. And I was like, okay. And so I'm like standing there pacing, and I'm like pretending I'm on the phone and just like scrolling the social medias to pass time. And then I hear a truck coming. And so I like walked closer to where the carport was, and I just kind of like hung there as it came out. And then as it had passed, and I was like pretty confident they wouldn't be like checking their mirrors behind them really, I just casually walked in. And so while I was doing this, I had everything, like my phone was videoing everything. And so as evidence, because nobody ever believes that this actually happens.
Yeah.
And so I videoed the entire thing just holding my phone like I was like talking on it or something with a headphone in. And I went from truck to truck to truck to truck and opened the unlocked doors and showed videos of me opening the unlocked door and then finding the keys either in the ignition or like in a cup holder or under a mat or somewhere.
Wow, so they
But
didn't even take the keys
of,
out of them. They just left them in there. Wow, that's crazy.
out of the first 13 trucks that I checked, 10 of them had the keys in them and were unlocked.
Unbelievable.
And
Wow.
one of them had the door unlocked, but I couldn't find the keys. And so
Wow.
then at that point, I was like, well, I've proved that I could steal it, because when you drive up to the thing, it opens and you're gone. And so then I was like, well, I guess let's try to get caught. So I started slamming the doors on all of them and walking around, and like I was like, wait a second, this is probably helping my case more than it is calling attention to me, because it looks like I totally belong here. And so then I just like walked around and walked closer to the guard station, and then I noticed that my coworker had come back around from the other side, and I was like, want to come on in? So like there was another truck that was leaving, so I just like walked back that direction and waited for the gate to open, and I was like, you know, you want to come in? Like, I was just going to walk out and we could go because it's been done, but like, let's do it again, I guess. And so he came in, and I got pictures of him doing all the stuff and us walking around, and then we're like, well, I mean, literally, like, let's just try to get caught. So we walked past the guard and into another area where they were getting ready to like pour a foundation, where there were a bunch of construction workers. we walked all the way down to the very last building in the area, and it was all glass. So I could see what was going on behind me without turning around. And this truck comes behind me, and there's like a whole bunch of people in it. And as it's turning, they're all looking at us. And nobody says anything. And like they drive
Wow.
through and drive away. And I was like, yeah, I think we just, because my whole tactic with this particular one is dress corporate, but like business casual. So we look like we're from the headquarters and we're like just there doing some
Yeah.
audit or something. Don't try to blend in and look
Yeah.
like somebody that's supposed to work there, because they know we don't. Like they're a tight knit enough group to know who's supposed to be there and who's not. And so then like we went around and did all the things, and I checked several other vehicles and found similar stuff and like badges inside the vehicles,
wow.
like employee badges and all kinds of stuff. And then
Well, we should have pulled one of those and went back out to the gate and
so
started.
like tempted. I was so tempted to grab it and use it, but it
Walk
was like,
it out.
So I took pictures of it though. So that's basically the same thing. And then we went back up to the gate, and they had like some trailer that had a fire extinguisher on it. And I was like, yo, check that fire extinguisher. We're auditing it for compliance reasons. And so I was like taking notes, and like 3 more trucks lined up to leave. And I was like, okay, after this last one, we're leaving. And so like they all leave, and then we walked right out behind them, got back in the car, and took off.
Wow.
Nobody contacted us. Nobody even tried to like, you don't look like you should be here. And I made like eye contact with like people that were working in the construction yard. One person walked out as we were like headed towards the exit for the last time. And I was like, oh no, this person's definitely going to say something. And as I walked, like he went behind a truck, and I was like, oh great, like he's going to like entrap me when I get to the other side of this truck. And I walked by, and he'd like bent down to get something out of a box or something. And I was like, really?
That's crazy.
Like it was nuts. So yeah, the like point of contact was in charge of security, and just thrilled because it means he gets all the monies to go invest in adding more security to these locations. And so it was pretty awesome.
He's like, this was the best investment ever. This was
That's an
perfect. Worked
He's
out
all, but please
perfectly.
don't like actually drive the trucks away. And I was like,
yeah, that's an
For real?
amazing story, man. I mean, you think about the adrenaline that has to be going, as you're trying to figure out how to do all this stuff.
Yeah, no,
and then to feel successful when you're done.
Because even though you have that get out of jail free, you don't want to use it. You want to just
you don't want to have to use it. Like getting confronted it's tricky, because they absolutely see you as a threat and they treat you accordingly. And so like this client is really wonderful because they actually do quarterly red teams with us. And so they're very security conscious and driven when it comes to making improvements and identifying those gaps. And it's like not every organization is really ready for a red team, It takes a certain maturity level to even to begin to consider that. So when I'm doing these things, I know I'm going up against a pretty formidable opponent in the team that they've installed there. And in this case, I mean, the information they gleaned from this was very critical to making improvements that wouldn't allow a real attacker to exploit the same things. And I always say, failing with me is the best case scenario because there's no actual negative impact to the business. And, for organizations that are this targeted, and I believe public utilities and utilities in general are very much like critical infrastructure targets, it's great to see a lot more adoption of that type of regimented program for security testing being adopted. And that's something that we do at Bishop Fox too, is create these offensive security roadmaps for our clients and help them figure out what to test next and on what schedule and all that good stuff.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, I think we're at the end of this segment. That was an action-packed segment. I mean, we could do a whole movie on that one, right? As you were telling the story, I was playing it out in my head like it was like a James Bond series or something.
It's more like Ace Ventura when he breaks into the billionaire's house. But
Okay, I'll go with that too. But let's take a break and then come back and wrap this up with our last segment.
To shut down vulnerabilities and improve resiliency, organizations need to test their security operations before threat actors do. Red team operations are arguably one of the best ways to do so.
Back, and as you heard in that segment there, some of the things that you're asked to do as a social engineer are a little bit iffy, and you can get yourself into some serious business there. That I can imagine that the adrenaline is rushing pretty hard in some of those scenarios. I don't know if I've got the ability to maintain that level of stress nonstop. That would be pretty hard to deal with. But I like to take this in a little bit different of a direction real quick. So I'm curious, Alethe, we had another social engineer on back in, I think it was season 1. And one of the things that she talked about was the guilt and the aspect of having to deal with tricking these people and then dealing with that, knowing that they're going to know, and most likely when this report gets written up, that they were the ones that got tricked. In some cases, they'll know. But the harder part was the compartmentalizing. How do you deal with that after the fact when it's you and you know you tricked them? I mean, is that hard to deal with? And what do you think of that aspect of it?
It is absolutely tough, especially for those who are great at building rapport. We're typically the type of person that also likes other people to like us. And so betraying that trust is something that can feel really terrible. And just manipulating people in general, that guilt does stay with you. In the context of the competition, it's a really highly pressurized, timed, crazy capture the flag style contest.
Yeah.
Where you don't really have much time to think about it. You're just trying to get a job done so that you can get the points and leave. But you also don't have any way to relieve yourself of the guilt, because you're not going to ever have the ability to share the report or speak to the things that happened, or, kind of frame it in a positive way. Like, these are the gaps we identified and here's how you fix it. And whereas with the engagements that I do with Bishop Fox, we are writing a report. Those reports are anonymous. We don't reveal the people who were compromised during an assessment in the report output. But ultimately, if credentials have to be reset, or, people have to be retrained, they will find out. And so that's difficult, because I don't typically have an opportunity to talk to those people directly or apologize. I'm talking to a point of contact that then has to approach that person to learn what happened and possibly assign, further training, or, describe what happened so it doesn't happen again. And I kind of dread ever seeing those people again, because I don't know how well I would be received. And so it absolutely is nerve-wracking from the standpoint of pretending to be somebody that I'm not. But I've grown to learn through, the last 5 years doing this, that I have to assume the identity of the person I'm pretending to be. So if I am masquerading as an IT technician that day, when I wake up, I am that person. And I'm very method in that way.
That's wild.
So, for example, I had a gig in a big city, and the institution that was our client is financially focused. And they had an office building that they wanted us to test physical security for, as well as the human element, and emphasizing the human element, because they believe that their physical security controls were quite well implemented. And this was a multi-tenant building. They were on several floors of a, very tall building. And they had badged access at the front door. They had badged access once you entered the elevator, where you'd have to scan the badge to select a floor, similar to a lot of the hotels that you stay in now, where they make you scan your room key before you can select a floor. And then once you went up the elevator and exited into the elevator lobby, there would be another door to the suite with a badge reader and a Ring camera. And so the Ring camera was set up to be motion activated, and the doors were supposed to be closed so that you'd have to actually scan a badge to open it or engage with a security guard on the Ring camera to gain access to just the suite lobby out of the elevator lobby. And so this seemed pretty overwhelming at the time. We had one opportunity to try to phish them through email. And so part of our job for this particular engagement was we were supposed to implant a malicious device on their network.
Ooh, fine.
And so I figured if we could have this device connect to their Wi-Fi, then we could have it pre-configured, plug it in and have it just go once we were able to get inside, if we didn't have a bunch of time to like sit there and like configure things, which you never really do. So I sent a phishing email and I tried to elicit their Wi-Fi password for their guest network, pretending to be the building manager, like the building management company. And immediately the person that I contacted referred me to the person that coordinates all the things for that office, who immediately tapped the IT and the security person who was our point of contact and like blew my whole pretext wide open. So like email phishing wise, solid. Like they did everything right. I was scared. So like going into this, I was petrified that they were going to be really, really, really well defended from a social engineering standpoint. And so for weeks, I agonized over this. Like, what am I going to say if I get confronted by somebody? What am I going to do? Who am I? What am I doing there? Do I have the things? And so my teammate and I, we agreed that we would masquerade as an IT MSP. And we had, he was able to find a couple of shirts for an IT MSP in a local like charitable donation store where they resell used items. Wow. And so he found 2 shirts that matched. And luckily we're the same size.
That works out.
So he grabbed 2 shirts, same size, and then we built an entire fake IT company around it. So I set up like our domain, our website. I had like a full phone number for this specific area code. I had an IVR together. And so if they called the number, they get an IVR that had the company and it would route to people that were backstopping us as our bosses. And I created and fabricated a work order that said we were there to install a device in the conference room. And we were able to capture badges by loitering outside the building one morning. And my coworker was able to clone those into badges that we'd purchased for this effort and had printed to look similar to the real company, the real IT MSP's badges, but in a design that I created with our pictures and our aliases. And then we like felt super prepared, right? So we had the badges and everything, and I was like, oh my God, we need a ladder. I was like, we definitely need a ladder. And then I was like, ooh, but this is like so many floors and there's an elevator. Like, I don't want to carry a ladder through the city. Like, that's going to be awkward. So I settled on like a metal clipboard, and it was like one of those metal folding clipboards that has like a compartment for stuff in it. And I shoved the device into it. So that we could like pull it out and just set it up really quickly. And so basically the task was to get into the building, go up the elevator, get into the floor that had the conference room, go into the conference room, and then install this bad boy.
Oh, nice.
So this is a screen crab, a Hack5 screen crab, as in CRAB. And I put this little Post-it on here. And then I had like command strips on the back so that I wouldn't damage their wall because I'm a considerate social engineer. And so the idea was like all the cables are there ready to go. And this sits in line between the conference room TV and the device that they use for conferencing software, with the HDMI cable going in and then ours going out to the final display. And then it captures screenshots as that data is going over that cable. So it says conference room, please do not remove. It's very official. Yeah. And it was stuck to the wall behind the TV so nobody could see it.
Who would ever remove that?
And
with
if they
that
did find
sticker
it, it looked normal. This is actually their Post-it note too, because the night before we went in, we decided to go dumpster diving. And it just so happened that somebody had like cleaned out a desk that day. And this was just the stupidest, craziest, most amazing luck ever,
Wow.
because they cleaned out a desk and it had all this stuff in it from like 2019, 2020 timeframe. And this particular city, they do trash collection nightly. So it wasn't even like we would have had a shot any other night to get it, but this night. And out of the trash, we found a bunch of Post-its, like business cards, letters, gifts, notes, sensitive documents, all this crazy helpful stuff about the move of their office, how the offices were configured, how the desks were supposed to be set up. It was like the person that was the office manager left the company and just left
Wow.
this time capsule.
Gold
And
mine.
part of that was this little acrylic frame, like a business card holder that like sits on a desk. And in it, it said the Wi-Fi network name and the Wi-Fi password.
No way.
And so the night before, I was like, point of contact, is this actually the right Wi-Fi credentials for the building? Because we weren't able to get it through the phishing, like the email phishing attempt. Like, is this it? Did we just get it from dumpster diving? I feel like we're being set up. And so he was like, yeah, no, that's not them. And I was like, okay, well, shoot. I mean, if you'll like concede giving us the guest Wi-Fi password, then we'll, set the device up and take advantage of that and just consider it, because this is a time box engagement, we could have eventually gotten the Wi-Fi credentials for the guest network if we'd had enough time, but blah, 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 whatever, concession. And I was like, but in the meantime, like, I'm just going to set up another, SD card with the credentials we found. So I had this red one that has the credentials we found in the trash. And I was like, I want to see if these work. Like, I want to test and see if these work first before we use the ones that were given to us as a concession. And then I had another card that was green that had the guest Wi-Fi credentials on it, so that in the instance that these ones didn't work, I could just pop them out and pop the new ones in for the guest network. And then we'd be like, this concession was made. We use the guest Wi-Fi credentials that were provided to us instead of these ones that we found. These ones worked.
Oh, no.
This was
Wow.
not the right password for the guest network. It was the right password for their corporate
Oh.
Wi-Fi network.
Wow.
And because they didn't have any requirement in place for devices that join to the network to comply with any type of certificate or other authentication protocol, it just automatically joined and was like, wee. And so we went to the building door, and we initially tried to scan our badges. Those badges, the credentials that we captured, were for a different tenant in the building. I guess they were a little bit more aware of their badges. And so our attempts to access the building the night before had been spotted, and they'd refreshed the badge because it had been like after hours, is my guess. So our badges didn't work.
Oh, gosh.
So we couldn't get into the exterior door. But we hung out front, and I was like, I'm going to make a call. Like, I'm calling somebody inside to let us in. And we waited for somebody that was delivering food to walk out, and then we grabbed the door and just reverse tailgated in. We got into the elevator. Our badges didn't work, so we only had one option of one floor, and luckily it was the one that the conference room was on, that you could get to this floor without a badge during business hours. And so we went up to that floor, and it opens, and it's just a black wall. And we're like, what the heck? Where's the door? It's like, what's going on? So I like poke my head out, and I'm like, the door's open. Come on, let's go. And so we walk into the lobby, and their door from the elevator lobby into the reception is open. It's propped open. So we don't even have to worry about this Ring camera, please let us in situation. And then I walk in, and I find the security guard, and he's just sitting to like the side with his feet propped up on a box, just chilling. And so I'd rehearsed all these things I was going to say, all these reasons I was there, all the things we were supposed to do. Here's my work order, whatever. And all I ended up doing in the moment was I saw that he was super relaxed. And this was like a Wednesday. It wasn't like the end of the week or anything, but I saw that he was like super chill. And so I just like dropped my whole posture and just like went limpish and relaxed. And I was just like, hey, we'll stay out of your hair. And I walked by.
Gosh.
And he had like taken his feet down from the box and like started to turn. But with how relaxed I was being there and just like casual I was with being like, ugh, I'm here to do a thing. He just went, okay, cool. Sounds good. and went back to what he was doing. And so we walked into the conference room, we installed this sucker behind the TV, and we were able to get it installed and get out of the building in under 4 minutes.
Success.
So like the elevator ride down, we even rode down in the elevator with some other employees, and they were like talking about their lunch and how they were irritated that they were going to have to work on this day that was supposed to be a holiday and like all this stuff. And so my coworker's like, where do you want to have lunch? I was like, I don't know. I was thinking about that sushi place over there. And he's like, yeah, that sounds good. Just to like fit in and seem normal. And then they exited the elevator on another floor. And honestly, I almost followed them just to see if we could go into another floor. But I was like, nope, this is enough. This is enough. We did the thing.
You've already won.
And so we
Yeah.
bailed out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So then we bailed out. But it's like, you know, to your point, do I feel good? Yes, I feel horribly guilty. Like I had to, you know, basically sell that one person out for not protecting their organization. And you know, we went back, we did more things. There were other, you know, people that fell victim to similar ploys, including one that reviewed the work order and said, yep, you're good. And then allowed us to continue. So it's like, it's pretty terrible because you feel like you're taking advantage of people and you're kind of like, you're hardening them and making them distrustful of other people. And that's kind of a sad thing to be responsible for. But at the same time, like, you know, you have to live in the world that is the one that we live in. And the reality is that you cannot trust anyone, especially when you're the gatekeeper in that scenario. And so, like I say, failing with me is the best case scenario for that person. It could have been a wildly malicious attacker that bypassed them in the same manner.
Sure.
And there could have been all kinds of, you know, financial and real detrimental results out of that. But this way,
Absolutely.
it's just, I got embarrassed, but I'm going to learn from this because it made an impact.
And that's what you have to tell them too.
It's one of those things where you have to continue to train people, right?
Well, and to a
Teach
degree,
people.
like I agree, security awareness training is fantastic. It's necessary, but it's not something that you can rely upon because people are always going to people. And so, I mean, you have so many different types of individuals. We all have different backgrounds, different traumas, different upbringing, different everything, different mental capabilities, different experiences. And so there are people who cognitively cannot discern that they are being manipulated. They cannot identify that behavior in real time because they're not capable of doing so. So
right, but what you're speaking to too, I had this conversation yesterday on a different topic, and it's one of the fundamentals again, and it is security and layers. Even where people are concerned, people are going to make mistakes. But if you have layers of security, then you can allow for a mistake to happen and still be covered.
Right.
And that's where typically that's where things tend to fall apart, is when you don't have layers in place.
It's about layers.
And you get into bypassing
but
something.
It's also about removing the responsibility for saying no from the human to make them enforce the no. So adding those technical controls and having those layers is fantastic. But for example, I just did a phone phishing engagement where the company wanted me to see if I could get patient health records from customer support people, and using their standard operating procedure for verifying customers' information, I was able to get all that information from public sources and pose as a customer, and the agent is doing exactly right what it says in the standard operating procedure. They are executing it to the letter, but still the company is failing and sending out information to an attacker because that method of verification is inadequate. And so what I recommended was that they have some other method of two-factor or second-factor authentication that is an item of information that is not known to anyone other than the organization and the customer, like a PIN number, for example. And they were like, that's just really difficult to implement. And I was like, well, yes, it is. It's difficult, it's expensive, it's time consuming. But in the meantime, like, here's how you can adapt the standard operating procedure to make it so that the agent can enforce it and then point to the sign. Like, this is why I have to say no. It's not up to me. And that helps make employees more comfortable, more confident saying no, but still being very polite about it.
That's a nugget right there. That's a nugget of information. And why that's a nugget, I'll give you another good example of that. A lot of security programs today have employee secure ratings that they try to apply. And those secure ratings on their employees are based on how well they do certain things. Like, hey,
did they report this phishing email?
Yes. I hate that. I hate the concept for it because of that reason alone. It doesn't allow the employee to take their own action and saying, I'm not dealing with this at all. If it's important, it's going to come back to me. But if it's not, if it is true phishing, then I've mitigated it and I've managed it. Because what you're asking the employee to do is to dive deeper and risk clicking on something and challenging it when they're like, I'm pretty sure this is, and the course of action would be to delete it. So I'm going to delete it. And if it's important, it can come back. It removes that control out of their hands. And that's an important piece of this equation.
Yeah. And I mean, we saw it with SIM swapping. The cellular carriers started to require a PIN number that was unique to that account. And I had a client just this week go, okay, great, we put a PIN number on it. But what's to say they're not going to just use the same PIN number they use on everything that requires a PIN number? And I'm like, I get it. Like, I know. But at the same time, like, if the attacker, say the attacker is able to voice phish the PIN number out of the customer. I myself have been a target of a similar attack. And I gave it to them and then went, that was strange. And then called the wireless carrier and went, is this real? And they're like, no. And I'm like, can we change that PIN number? But like, I mean, there's a risk, but what you're trying to do, like you said, is add those layers of protection. And the more difficult you make it and the less responsibility you put on the human, the better. So if there's a screen that says you have to put the 4-digit PIN in before I can give you access to this client account to the representative, and there's no way to bypass that, that takes the responsibility off of the human to enforce the process. And that's where the combination of both technical security controls, technical tools, and technical barriers for the human protect the human and allow them to do their job and be polite and do great customer service and, enforce the rules without being responsible for making the decision or delivering the no. Because I have been in that position. I wore a name tag for a long time, and telling people I can't help you seems really contrarian to what I've learned about being an excellent customer service person. And so just like removing that burden, like, I feel guilty for doing what I did to the security guard. I do. I still feel that guilt. But if you're dealing with hundreds of people a week, like, the guilt from saying, no, I can't help you, and having to be responsible for that also weighs on those people. And then they just get worn down, and then they're more likely to fail to adhere to the process.
And then you're having employees that don't really like their job anymore because they have constraints
burn out real quick.
That they're being graded on.
Right.
We run into that with normal phishing routines.
Anybody can be subject to a phishing attack. I have responded to a phishing email in the context of helping my father-in-law with his business. He was like, I've got this email and, could you just help me monitor these things? And I had been trying to solve this problem for a former employee. And then I got an email from the former employee and I responded with something innocuous. But then I was like, wait a second, where did this come from? And it was like some random Gmail. Of course, I mean, it's a former employee. It would come from a Gmail or something external. But in the moment, I just, answered the question. And then I was like, you idiot. So it's like everybody is susceptible to these things. The right cocktail of distraction and, we're just looking at so many tasks to do in a single day, and it's overwhelming.
Well, and if you hire a really good pen testing firm to come in and target your organization specifically and strategically phish one or two people with a finely crafted phishing email that makes sense. If you do enough OSINT on any company, you can craft an email that's going to be believable, legitimate looking, And if you miss one red flag, you're right.
Mhm.
Even people that understand it can fall victim to it. You know, because maybe
I
there's
like
not
to
that many
layer
red
my
flags in it.
attacks too.
Yeah.
Like I like to layer my
Yeah,
attacks
yeah.
too. So like I collect like seemingly completely normal innocuous information from several calls, and then I use that to compile the pretext that's just like, you know, the chokehold at the
Next
end
level
that gives
fishing.
me the thing that I
Yeah.
need. Because I mean there's multiple styles of engagement. There's like the let's test the people and we'll get a broad sample. And I think that's what most of us think of when we think about social engineering and especially email phishing
Yeah.
assessments. But then there's also like the red team style where it's like there's one trophy, there's one path directly to that trophy, and that's what we're trying to determine is what that path looks like. And sometimes the people get caught in the crosshairs. And like you said, it just takes one. I just need one.
Right.
Yeah. Give me your credentials.
But I look cute and,
So-
and very, very innocent and
Yeah.
very harmless when I do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, hi, give me your credentials. No. So that being said, let's get into another topic along those lines. You know, you said that you're no longer eligible
Mhm.
to compete in the social engineering competitions. And so now you participate as a DEF CON goon. So tell us a little bit about what it is. What's a goon? What does it mean to be a goon? And why have you taken this path?
Yeah, of course. So DEF CON is a massive conference. There are probably over 30,000 attendees now on an annual basis. And so it takes a large group of people to manage and organize the conference, but then they typically enlist the help of volunteers to help to manage the people and the day-to-day events. So there are various groups of goons, and you can think of a goon similar to like a prefect in Harry Potter, or in the British school system, they have prefects that help to manage students who are peers of the students, but just have a little elevated station of power there. So there's like, the AV goons that help with all the audio, video, visual type things that have to happen during the conference. There's contest goons that help to manage all of the contests that occur during DEF CON and make sure that the contest runners have the resources that they need and that, people aren't getting out of hand when they're happening. There's also goons that manage all of the speaker ops and goons that manage the SOC for the DEF CON SOC. And there's goons that volunteer to help manage traffic and just coordinate people in the hallways. If you've ever heard the make a hole from the other end of the hallway, that is a goon.
Yeah.
If you've heard the rubber chickens, that means they're trying to get your attention. And the particular group that I am affiliated with is the DEF CON groups board. And so we are the board that manages the DEF CON groups all around the world and helps to govern those groups and give them support for things that they need while they're getting formed, and if they have questions along the way, and helps to apply the code of conduct to each of the group's meetings and help provide guidance there if there's any tricky situations that come up. So during DEF CON, you'll see me wearing a red shirt and a badge with my name on it, and I try to volunteer in other areas of DEF CON while I am gooning, but I am most often found in the DEF CON groups community space within DEF CON, sometimes in merch because I love picking orders. It's like
who
my
wouldn't want
most
to be in the
favorite
merch
thing.
area, right?
That's so fun. So last year I started working merch really early in the morning on the first day and picking orders for folks. So you probably saw me running around like an idiot behind the table collecting orders for folks. And that was a ton of fun. Really, really cool group. If you want to be involved with merch, you can totally reach out and help. I know that they're always looking for more people to support that function because the line is just bananas.
It's insane. It's
Oh, it
insane.
always
But there are
is,
so
yeah.
many different opportunities within DEF CON. If gooning is not for you, you can absolutely volunteer at a village that strikes your fancy. Red Team Village is another village that I love to support and was able to volunteer with last year. And they're always looking for volunteers to help run things in the village and keep things moving during the con. And several other villages pop to mind as far as those that are looking for volunteers right now. And that's a way that you can help contribute without getting too involved in the broader conference, and probably less time commitment requirements there from the village aspect.
So when you get there, like, do
Yeah.
the goons arrive a little bit early so you can kind of coordinate with the other folks and know, okay, here's our plan of attack for this particular village or for merch or for whatever? How do you kind of get your marching orders?
It depends on the group. So merch shows up quite well in advance because they need to set everything up and like get the boxes of merchandise ready to be picked. And then organize how to, receive money and like do all the things. So they have a longer setup period. For my group, we typically only show up a day or two in advance, and there's no real strategy other than setting up the DEF CON group's community and helping to staff that throughout the conference. And so just getting all the things organized, usually that's done kind of remotely, but we do retrieve our badges and all of the things the day before LineCon.
The red badge, right?
So,
the red badge.
Yes.
That's a special badge.
The red badge.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. All right. Well, hey, we've covered a lot of ground today. And I feel like we can't just end here. We got to do one more thing. Jason, we got our signature game that we like to play with all of our guests. So let's take a really quick break this time, and then we'll come back and we'll wrap it up with that.
Here are some interesting social engineering facts from last year. 98% of cyber attacks involve some form of social engineering. Up to 90% of malicious data breaches involve social engineering. The average organization is targeted by 700 plus social engineering attacks annually. Men are 225% more likely to fall for phishing attacks than women. In 86% of organizations, at least one person has clicked a phishing link. Small businesses are subject to 350% more social engineering attacks than enterprises. 50% of social engineering attacks are pretexting incidences, and CEOs are targeted by phishing attacks 57 times per year on average.
So, all right, welcome back. We're in our last segment here, and this has been a lot of fascinating conversations happening here. It's been a lot of fun. We could do this all day and listen to these stories and add dialogue. But we're going to finish this with a signature Kevin series, and I call it Kevin because I am not claiming to do any of this wacky stuff. That's all Kevin. And we're going to play the Would You Rather game. And so, Alethe, we like to do this with our guests from time to time. We're going to go through a series of questions. I'll have 5, then Kevin will have 5, and we'll alternate like that. And the goal here is to answer with the first answer that pops into your head for every one of these questions. And we're going to go as quickly as we can through these. Now, we say that, and then we end up laughing, and it drags on.
Feel free
to give context,
to elaborate on why you would choose what you chose, too, if you want to. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
all right. Are you ready for this?
I like how she rolls her eyes.
Yeah,
and
I
says,
got to tell you this.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I don't feel bad because I've been subject to Kevin's shenanigans here as well, so I know what it feels like. But let's jump right in it. Okay, so the first one, I'm going to go first, Kevin. So, Alethe, would you rather have the ability to talk to animals or speak a foreign language?
Oh, speak a foreign language for
Okay.
sure. Honestly, the thing that would most benefit me in my life right now would be to be able to understand and speak Spanish, just because of where I am geographically. It would be so amazing for me to just like shock people with the fact that I could speak and understand it, because people speak it around me a lot, assuming that I can't understand them, and I pick up parts here and there. But yeah, as far as animals, like I love animals, but like I really don't want to hear how much my dog is annoyed that I haven't fed him.
Right, yeah. Who knows? That's a whole nother world when you go there. All right. Would you rather always have to dance while walking or sing instead of speaking?
Oh, Lord. I could not live in an endless musical. But the dancing would hey, I may get into like way better shape. Okay, we'll go with the
All right,
dancing.
dancing. All right, would you rather be a genius in a world of idiots or an idiot in a world of geniuses?
That's a good one.
Like the social engineer in me is like genius for sure. But at the same time, like
Yeah.
ignorance is bliss.
Oh,
So
that is true.
I feel like I'd be a lot less frustrated
Yeah.
if I was just the idiot in the world of geniuses and
That's a
I could
great point.
blissfully
That's a
go
great
through
point.
That
life.
is very
Actually.
true. Think about if you knew everything, you'd be like, oh my gosh, these
You'd be
people
so
are
frustrated
all so
all the
annoying.
time. Yeah.
You know? Yeah, you'd be
Yeah.
frustrated all the time. That's a good one. All right. Would you rather have a time machine that only goes back in time or only forward?
That's a good one. If you go back, can you stay there?
Yeah, you can never go back forward. It will only go backwards.
Right. Okay, I'll take the going back for 5,000.
All right, my last one. Have you have a head the size of a tennis ball or the size of a watermelon?
That's going to be.
Okay, I already think my head is kind of too small for my body, so I'm going to go with
Whoa.
Watermelon head.
Big old head.
All right, I got
All right,
the next
Kevin, your
one.
turn.
So, okay, would you rather be famous in this lifetime or go down in the history books?
Oh, yeah. Well, I've had a taste of semi-niche, very specialized fame in this industry, and it's enough for me to know I'd probably not like to be any more famous. So I'll just go down in history, like
Right.
go out with a bang, I guess. I don't know. Make a mark somehow. But
Yeah,
like
yeah.
being recognized
yeah,
after the
that'd be a
fact
cool
is
Yeah.
thing. Have your name in it.
when all of my
There you go.
NDAs expire.
All right. Would you rather be forced to wear wet socks for a day or have dry hands for a year?
Oof. Dry hands for a year
The wet.
because I can't
Oh, it's
do
the
wet
worst.
clothing. I actually, like when I was a kid in Santa Cruz, I was walking to the bus and this car like came around the corner and it splashed a whole puddle up on me from like the neck down. It's like already raining and now I'm like soaked from like the front down and I had to like sit on the bus for like wait for the bus, then sit on the bus and
Oh,
then
oh,
get
that
home like
sucks.
soaked
Yeah.
like into my shoes. So no thank
Kind
you.
of might,
I will be
think
dry.
I might agree with you on that. Okay. Would you rather live without music or live without TV? I know they both suck, don't they?
Ah.
I know.
That's
awful.
so rude. Yeah. So, I think I could probably do without music more so than TV because I have learned so much from TV and like just studying actors in general and characters and character development
yeah.
and
Yeah.
like like that's my form of escapism is movies and TV
Yeah.
and just like
Since
that's
you
how I
answered
decompress. So,
that way,
yeah,
I'm going to go
I'd
ahead
have to
and
go
throw
with
in
music, which would
YouTube
suck.
too. You can
But,
even have
yeah.
YouTube, but I'm taking your Spotify.
Oh, amazing.
Okay. Would you rather be the best at something no one cares about or mediocre at something everyone cares about?
Well, I'm already that.
So let me try the other.
No. Let's see.
Yeah.
The best at something nobody cares about, or mediocre at something that everybody cares about. Okay, I feel like if everybody cares about it, they're going to scrutinize it, and I couldn't handle the scrutiny. It's like one of the reasons why I keep turning down all the TV show opportunities that I'm approached with is because I don't think I
gosh.
can handle the judgment. So I'll go with like the best at something nobody's watching any
right.
day.
Yeah.
Have
All right.
to use a public restroom that's a bit dirty or never use a public restroom again?
Well, I've got 4 kids. I use public restrooms that are
Okay.
disgusting all the time, but I bring my own
there you
wipes
go.
because I'm a mom and
There
I'm
you go.
prepared.
There you go. That was an easy one, Kevin. All right. I've got it now. So let's say, would you rather be constantly itchy or constantly sticky?
Oh, Lord. Why?
Can I answer? Just shoot me, please.
Okay, sticky is part of like my worst nightmares. Like, you know, when you just find that like
Yeah.
spot of syrup on the
Yeah.
countertop or whatever, like I can't. So I guess itchy it
Oh.
is, which is gonna drive me insane.
Yeah,
There's not a
neither are
good
good
there's not
solutions.
an answer that works.
Both terrible.
All right. Would you rather have a rewind button or a pause button for your life?
I'd say pause.
Oh.
Yeah, I would go with
So,
pause because
Time machine that only goes back and pauses.
He wants to
Mhm.
get somewhere comfortable and stay.
Very good.
Yeah,
I know.
Well, because there's never enough
agree.
flipping time. I am always late for like everything. I just need to pause it so I can
Exactly.
get all the things
Exactly.
and then not
Yeah.
be late. But then on like the time machine thing, like I don't
Yeah.
want to go into the unknown. Like, no
Yeah.
thanks. I'd much rather go back to like the 80s and
All
rule
right,
the world.
Okay, there you go. All right. So, would you rather be the funniest person in the room or the most intelligent?
Funniest for sure. I think I execute
Yeah.
that on a daily basis because I'm definitely not the smartest.
All right. Would you rather be able to erase people's memory or predict the future?
Oof.
That'd
Erase
be
people's
awesome, wouldn't
memories
it?
just because that would be fun.
Yeah.
Be like, you never told me that. Yes, I did.
Yeah.
No, you
Yeah.
didn't.
Oh, yeah. You're right. No, I didn't.
Honey, didn't you say you're going to mow this
Or-
afternoon?
Yep.
What? I don't know. I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
All right. Would you rather have a 10-inch? This is a good one. So really pay attention.
Oh, no.
Would
Yeah,
you rather
that-
have?
You paused on an awful point of that.
Would you rather have a 10-inch long belly button that sways to music, or would you rather have accordion legs?
This is
the movie
awful.
you were laughing at?
Okay, but I can hide a belly button.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be. I think I'm gonna have to go with the belly button because I can like duct tape that thing down and
That'd be
hide.
awesome if you could do a little thumbs up too. In addition to the sway. That'd be
Yeah.
Oh Lord.
That's
Is that,
hilarious.
okay, is that it?
All right,
Okay.
Kevin.
Would you rather wear a snowsuit in the desert or be naked in Antarctica? Yeah. Yeah. I hear
Snowsuit.
ya. Okay. Would you rather have constantly changing hair color or a constantly changing voice pitch?
Oh, yeah, that's easy. I'd go with
That'd be
hair
kinda
color.
cool,
I mean, my
actually,
hair
wouldn't
color
it?
changes constantly anyway. But
I don't know what
Purple.
you're
it
talking
would be
about,
kind
Kevin.
of
Green, blue.
cool.
All right. Would you rather be able to eat anything and not gain weight or be able to read minds?
Okay, I'm gonna go with reading
Yeah.
minds because that's way more interesting.
Yeah, it actually is way more interesting. Okay. Have every cat or dog that gets lost end up at your house or never see any cats or dogs again.
They already do that.
So now you got to deal with all of them
wow.
or none of them.
That's
right?
rough. Oh man, I'd have to say none because there's no way I could like maintain a life
Yeah,
outside of
got-
taking care of all the cats and
Yeah.
dogs. And that
I'm gonna
just
tell
seems
you,
like
right?
an episode of Hoarders waiting to happen and like
I-
some law
I-
enforcement
yeah,
situation.
man.
Yeah.
We would be the worst people.
You'd have to have a dump truck just
We'd
to
be the worst
scoop
people
your
to
yard.
run a pet shelter because I would be bringing every pet home with me
Mhm.
because I'd feel terrible about it. I'd be
Yeah, you would.
Yep.
Yeah, you would.
Oh yeah, I
I
worked
can
at a pet
imagine.
store and I
Yeah.
ended up with like a menagerie,
Yeah.
and
I gotta
was
quit
like,
this job
this is a
today."
problem.
All right, last one. Would you rather have internet access with
Yeah.
no TV or TV with no internet access?
Ooh, like the olden days.
So what's more important? We know TV was important compared to music, but what about internet?
Yeah, but like if I have internet access, does that like include
No.
streaming?
Not in this scenario.
Well, I think the internet is a giant hellscape, so I'm probably
Yeah.
just gonna go with the not internet
Yeah,
option.
good choice.
20 years
good
ago, what was
choice.
internet
TV
anyway,
and no
right?
internet.
Yeah,
Okay, maybe 30 years, whatever.
yeah.
All right. So that was good. Yeah, I mean, most of your answers I agree with, by the way. There were a couple where I might have gone the other way, but,
Mhm.
good stuff.
Yeah, I know you would have really enjoyed the belly button one, Kevin. I know you would have.
Dude, there's no doubt. Yeah.
The accordion legs.
Give me a tail that looks like a baby arm on my backside that can give a peace sign all the time. I'm taking it. I don't care.
No.
Okay, so let's wrap this thing up, guys.
Well,
What do you say?
yeah, it's been real fun. I really appreciate you jumping on this show with us, Alethe. One of the things Kevin and I said when we started doing this podcast is connecting to people, continuing to spread the word and knowledge across the community, and continuing to have community with people is important to us. And when we do things like this with you and hear your story and listen to all of the intriguing things that are happening within this field, and how other people can be encouraged to either pursue a field in cybersecurity or learn more about how this thing works. I mean, a lot of what you shared today can be useful for people to think about. Oh, okay, now the next time I need to think about that if I think I'm being phished or anything to that effect. Right? There's nuggets of information that you shared today that is useful for all of us and for the community. So thank you very much for participating and sharing your thoughts and your story with us and having some fun on this afternoon.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me. This has been an absolute blast. Probably one of the most fun conversations I've had on a podcast. Definitely the most interesting questions there at the end. But I absolutely appreciate the time, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Again, I'll just echo what Jason said. It's been awesome. I knew it was going to be fun having you on. When we put your name on the list, I'm like, yeah, if she says yes, this is going to be a good one, because she's got a really cool story to tell. And not only did we hear that story, but we heard so much more. And that's so cool to be able to share that to everybody. So Jason, should I or do you want to tease the next episode here? It's all me?
It's all you, buddy. It's all you. Yeah.
Maybe.
Anyone I know?
Yeah, actually, I believe you do.
Anyone, everybody knows?
Anybody who's ever heard the term cybersecurity knows? Yeah. So, okay, the next guest, and this is a big one. Again, we talked about the little podcasting bucket list earlier today. This name was also on that list, and for good reason. The next guest is going to be the master of storytelling, Mr. Jack Rhysider. And for those of you, I don't even want to say those that don't know him, because there's nobody that doesn't know him. But for the one person that doesn't know Jack Rhysider, he runs Darknet Diaries, which is an amazing podcast that kind of takes more of a true crime storytelling type approach to the episodes, and it's amazing. It's just incredible. If you've never heard it, go out and check it out. I'm sure I'm maybe talking to one person, but either way, he's going to be on, and we're actually going to be recording that episode next week. So it will drop right after the episode with Alethe. And so we're going to have 2 back-to-back powerhouse badass episodes for people to take in. So hopefully you enjoyed this one, and you'll enjoy the next one too. So with that, thank you all. And until next time, take care, everybody. Stay safe.
See you later.
Cheers.
Thanks.
I'm Ashley. I'm an artificially generated avatar with the ability to manipulate your mind via the power of my intelligence botnets. Let me prove it to you. You're about to click on that subscribe button, and then you'll click on the notification bell so you don't miss when Kevin and Jason drop future episodes of the Cyber Distortion podcast. So, go ahead. That's right. Slide your mouse over slowly and gracefully. There you go. Now click. See, that wasn't so bad now, was it? I'd like to thank you for listening to today's amazing podcast episode on YouTube or your favorite audio streaming platform, and don't forget to tell your friends. Oh, and remain diligent, my cyber friends. The world is a very scary place.